Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff, and this show is designed to highlight the work of philanthropic leaders here in the United States and then beyond. Today with us, a fascinating woman. Her name, Judith Kasen Windsor, and Judith is best known as an activist and advocate for the LGBTQ community. She's also a Wall Street woman. Let's all welcome Judith Kasen Windsor. And Judith, it is so great to have you back with us. And
Thank
Judith,
you for having me back.
Yes, and Judith, I want to start with your background with Edie Windsor and a little bit about why your relationship, your marriage to Edie was so important and what exactly Edie Windsor did back in 2013 that was so important for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah. I was an activist and an advocate for decades, and that's how I used to bump into Edie Windsor all the time. I just recently saw a speech that she was introducing me, and it's one of the most precious things that I have. And, that was really what sort of pulled us together, on top of some personality traits and some attraction traits and some other things like that. But, Edie and I were always, you have to, and you would know this also, to be involved with various organizations, you have to feel it in your core and you have to feel it in your heart and your head, and, Edie felt very strongly about marriage equality. People, she had this expression of, gay Americans need to show other people that we live and love as they do. And so she felt very adamant about marriage equality, and we felt very adamant about marriage equality. And, once she took down the Defense of Marriage Act, which defined marriage between one male and one female, and now we have due process of the Fifth Amendment. But fast forward, it was important to the community to be somewhat normalized. And in that taking down of that, Defense of Marriage Act, Edie Windsor changed 7,800 laws that did not pertain to LGBTQ people and couples, and 1,128 tax laws in one fell swoop, which is a really big deal. People talk about don't ask, don't tell, or adoption, or healthcare issues, or, there's a number of issues, but people didn't realize how many laws and how many tax laws that we were excluded from just for being LGBTQ.
Yes, and this was a Supreme Court case, correct, where she was chief plaintiff.
Yes.
And she had, I think, the Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act
correct
repealed. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, she went, she had to go through, everybody talks about the $363,000 that she paid to the federal government. But even though New York recognized marriages from other states and other countries, because she was married to Thea in Canada, New York recognized that. She also paid $275,000 in taxes in New York State. So it was a bigger number than just the 363. She got the New York back. The New York Supreme Court found it unconstitutional. And then, from there, she's like, it's not fair. It's like, I don't have to pay these taxes. What about everybody else? And that's when she decided to take it further and take it to the federal level and take it to the Supreme Court, which, to get a Supreme Court case, that I always say it's like a needle in two haystacks. It's not an easy venture to get a Supreme Court case. And so for her to get this, it was the right time. It was the right plaintiff. It was just the right moment. And fortunately, Edie got that moment.
And I remember reading about this on the cover of the New York Times back in 2013.
Yes.
That is how important this case was.
Huge.
Now, Judith, you were married to Edie for a short time, for a few years, I understand, and then she passed away.
Yes.
And since that time, you've carried on her legacy, and I would like you to explain to us exactly how you've done that.
A lot, as you know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. I want to clarify one thing though. We always talk about, everyone always thanks me and says, the way you're carrying on her legacy is amazing. Well, I always say to them, it's not it is her legacy, but her legacy is our legacy. She left us with this gift, and she left us with the information that we needed to help LGBTQ youth and LGBTQ elders and the trans community. And, that can spread far and wide. We have young people now with, non-binary and pansexual and bisexual and all these things. She brought this stuff, out into the open and out into the light. And that's why I always say Edie Windsor started a movement, because as soon as she won marriage equality, she pivoted and took that case and took that notoriety and started speaking about all of those other issues that involve all those other things. And it doesn't just include the LGBT community. We have to think about civil rights for every marginalized community. And that's another, thing about the Edie Windsor Center. We help, the Shinnecock, reservation, people. We help women. We help, any marginalized group. And that's what I like about the Edie Windsor Center. It's not just an LGBTQ center. It is a center for everyone. Like, I even go to the center. When I came out here last year because of COVID, I didn't have a general practitioner out here or a gynecologist out here. And I use the Edie Windsor Center as sort of my conduit into the hospital. And they recommended doctors to me. And, I have these doctors. And so it's like for everyone. You don't have to have HIV or AIDS or any of these things. It's for everyone.
Yes, and for our audience, I just want to back up a little bit.
Please.
We are with Judith Windsor, and she is speaking about the Edie Windsor Center at the Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, which is located in Hampton Bays.
Right.
And Judith has taken it upon herself to get very involved in this center, a center which is open to all, and which has a particular focus, I believe, on the LGBTQ community. Is that correct, Judith?
Yes, it absolutely has a focus on the LGBT community, because, we have found, through, even out here during the pandemic, that, we don't have those special niche needs, out here. I had 2 trans kids. One came from New Jersey and the other one came from New York, and they moved, one was in Montauk, and, they could not find a doctor on the East End that could help with the hormonal therapy and keep the young person going in the direction where they needed to go. So they contacted me. I sent them to the Edie Windsor Center, and, that was rectified. I also had a trans youth that, was going to commit suicide. And, that is the very important part of the Edie Windsor Center. Also, we have mental health services. And I find that extremely important for, young people, older people who are lonely. And then it also, I want Long Island to know this is the only LGBTQ, healthcare center, but we also provide mental health services, which is so important for young people, older people who are lonely. And then, families who are dealing, when a child comes out, the whole family has to come out with them. Or if a child transitions, male to female, or as a trans person, the whole family has to transition with them. And so we have the mental health resources and have, group therapy rooms to help these families. Because it is a family affair.
Yes, and it's a very important center. And as you said, the Edie Windsor Center at Stony Brook Southampton Hospital is open to all, but it has a focus on healthcare needs of the LGBTQ community. And you said also it's unique to Long Island. I think it's very important. And myself personally, I serve on the Southampton Hospital Association board, and I know that this is an important center for the entire hospital and for the entire community. Now, during this COVID-19,
thank you for all the work that you do with Southampton Hospital. I know you work tirelessly, and we're very appreciative of that.
Well, thank you very much, Judith, and thank you for all you are doing for the hospital as well, and for many different communities. Now, going back to the COVID-19 pandemic and how life was for all of us, it was a very difficult time for most of us. And as we emerge out of the pandemic, talk a little bit, Judith, about how it affected the LGBTQ community.
We had a very high suicide rate. over 40% of the homeless youth on the street are LGBTQ. So that's a very significant number. And we had, I know numbers from the Trevor Project, just within the first month, their calls went up like 30%. And then now it's like 60%. It was a huge, huge crisis, because not every family is accepting of, an LGBTQ child. And for them to be then in a house with a place where, they're not accepted, it became a real mental health issue and a runaway issue and unfortunately a suicide issue. And we just want to know, we want youth to know, we want everyone to know, these resources are now out here on Long Island.
Yes,
I did a lot of work in the city with, various organizations like Callan Lord and Hedrick Martin, the Harvey Milk High School, the LGBT Center, SAGE, which is for senior LGBT people. We're in collaboration with all of them because, we're just getting started, and, they've been doing this for a while, and they've been very helpful and very meaningful. And if they have patients, they have been sending them to us. So we're excited about it. We're very excited.
Yes, and this pandemic has really created a lot of difficulty for many people. And as we emerge out of the pandemic, there still is enormous suffering. There's enormous unemployment still. There's food insecurity. And then in the LGBTQ community, what I'm hearing is that for the children, it's been particularly tough, especially if a family is not accepting. And for the parents watching this show, the most important thing you can give a child is love. And of course, you have to discipline and you have to provide a good education. But love and understanding and acceptance are key. And that's regardless of whatever situation your child is in. Of course, if your child is doing something that's he's breaking the law, well, then that child has to be disciplined. And or if your child is unruly, your child has to be disciplined. But in the case of the LGBTQ community, parents have to be understanding and accepting. And I'm so glad that the Stony Brook Southampton Hospital now has the Edie Windsor Center for the LGBTQ community. And Judith, you who are so involved with the center, how do you go about fundraising?
A variety of things. Of course, I tap into the LGBTQ community that is out in the Hamptons. And then we are working on a very wonderful project with the town of Southampton. When I came out here mid-March, I went to their town supervisor, Jay Schneiderman, and I suggested, a statue or a street naming, because that's kind of the things that we do in Manhattan. And he was like, that's a little, it's a little sticky out here. But he came up with this wonderful idea. They have, marriages at Southampton Town Hall, and he does them like right there on the steps. It's not very glamorous. It's not very exciting. And he came up with this idea of building this 16-foot heart. And within the heart, there are hearts, and they're going to be interlocking, and they will be engraved, and you can put anything that you want on there. You could put, you could put your marriage. People have dedicated them to Edie herself. People have put, a friend that died of AIDS 20, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. We've had all kinds of interesting, and it's interesting to see, what people are going to put on, their heart. But that is going to be a big fundraiser for us. At the moment, we've raised about $250,000. The hearts are $1,000, and we have sold out. We're almost sold out. That we have to build a bigger platform and probably a sidewalk to the heart. And so there will be more opportunities because, we wanted this to be ongoing. I certainly reached out to all of my friends and all of Edie's friends that we've known in the Hamptons for years, and they have all put in for the hearts. And then I want to take it out to the general population and keep expanding, and so they can have an opportunity, because there's not too many things in this country that are named after women, let alone an LGBTQ woman. So I find this extremely important.
Now, the heart.
Yes.
The heart is out, you're saying, on the steps of City Hall. And if someone wants to buy a heart, who do they make a check out to? I assume it's the Edie Windsor Center at Southampton,
No,
Stony Brook
it
Southampton
actually goes
Hospital.
directly to Southampton. There is a dedicated website, which I will get to you. We have a dedicated website to the Edie Windsor Heart, and I will get you that website.
And
So
the
you
money,
could Google Edie Windsor Heart, Southampton, and you can find the website, and you can fill out the information and pay for and take care of it right then and there. And it's
and besides
tax-free and tax deductible.
And besides having your name on the heart, what are the funds used for?
100% they are going to be used to fund the Edie Windsor Healthcare Center. 100%.
And that's a wonderful thing.
We have like zero overhead. We got to, we really tweak I'm very adamant about these things. If you're going to throw a big gala, you might as well make a lot of money doing it. I can't stand when you have these big galas and they only walk away with a net. Well, then you know what? Sometimes you can cut out and you can make the flower arrangement a little smaller. There's things that you can do. I think we should maximize the dollars that are going to the actual organization itself. So we really tweaked the hearts, and we really tweaked all the expenses, and so all that is going to go to directly to the Edie Windsor Center.
Yes, and for our audience, we are with Judith Kasen Windsor. She is an activist, she's an advocate, and a businesswoman particularly involved in LGBTQ rights, and particularly involved with the Edie Windsor Center at Stony Brook Southampton Hospital. She's discussing some of the ways that they are fundraising, one being this big heart at City, on the steps of City Hall. Is that correct? And how they raise money. And Judith, we were just talking about charity galas, and myself, I've been involved with many charity galas, and for our viewers, I think it's very important to know that a charity gala is specifically done to raise money and visibility for a cause. And generally speaking, the expenses of a charity gala should never be greater than a third of all money brought in. Now, a charity has to be run like a business. It's a very serious operation. People giving to a charity want to make sure they're giving to a good charity. And this also goes for a charity gala. If you're holding a charity gala, it has to be run like a business. And so I know Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, generally we give a big gala, but during the COVID years, we have refrained from giving a big gala. Instead, we are doing galas in your garden, which means in 2020, and then now this year, 2021, we are having different people give very small parties in their backyards. And we are selling quote unquote tables, and we're taking donations. And if you're interested in getting involved in this, or you're interested in getting involved in the Edie Windsor Center by donating, you simply go to Stony Brook Southampton Hospital website and you can give a donation. You can get involved in a charity gala. You can do exactly what you want to do, because here on the eastern end of Long Island, really there's nothing more important than supporting the Stony Brook Southampton Hospital. We all need a good hospital. The hospital is for everyone. And I invite you all to participate. Getting back to Judith. Judith, tell us about your future plans for the Edie Windsor Center.
My future, and I agree with you 100% how important. And if this year taught us anything, it was that we really need, really expert medical care here out on Long Island. Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, we've gotten the highest rating from the Human Rights Campaign, or HRC. We've gotten other LGBTQ acknowledgements on how much we are doing for this community, and we've gotten some awards, and I'm very proud of that. I am continuing this work. I am continuing to make sure that people know that the resources are there. That is very important to me. ISLIP has a trans resource center, and I've been having conversations back and forth with them. I want to give them a tour of the Edie Windsor Center. I want them to know we have the resources, we have the healthcare, we have the doctors on staff. It's very important, for everyone to know. And then my next goal is to put the Edie Windsor Center, we have it here in Hampton Bays. And the reason why we put it in Hampton Bays, because demographically from Montauk to Islip, it was sort of the most central location. And we also could get the most amount of space. And it was important to me to have, doctors, mental health, group therapy rooms, all these things. It was very important for me. So I went for the biggest amount of space. And then the next step that I would like is to have the second Edie Windsor Center at Stony Brook Hospital, in the middle of the island. So at least we will have two, and people will have access to those. So I'm working on my second one, but it's.
And what advice do you give to a young person who is just starting his or her life, and maybe they're in a family situation where they're not particularly being understood because of their sexual preference? What advice can you give to that young person?
If people in your life can't catch up, they can't catch up. And then you just have to continue to live your life. And I just hope those young people know I am reached out to on social media on a very regular basis. Someone who graduates from high school and they came home and all of their stuff was out on the front lawn. And she was like, what should I do? I said, you put your stuff in the car and you go find a friend and, whatever. And, I need the community all over the country, all over the world to know that there are resources out there. There are people out there. There's mentorship programs to healthcare, to mental health services. There's so many resources out there, and I need them to understand, and I need them to know that, to contact their local, LGBT center or their local, LGBT group, whether it be Callan Lord or, there's things all over the country, to reach out to Trevor Project if you're feeling that suicidal, there are so many resources out there. We have worked decades to build these resources for them. So I really want them to use them.
Well, I think it's very important for young people and then not so young people to know that if they're struggling and they're having difficulty and they're in a situation with a family who is not supportive of them for any reason, they have to go and look for help, and help is available. Absolutely. It's available here on the eastern end of Long Island. It's available in New York City. It's available throughout the United States, because
it's available in Wichita, Kansas. It's, we do have the resources. And then, on the other end of the spectrum, which I find very interesting, is, LGBTQ elders are being turned away and or ostracized at nursing homes and assisted living. They have to go back into the closet. There was a case in St. Louis where, a married lesbian couple were denied access into assisted living or a nursing home because they were gay. And, so there's, it runs the gamut. So, we've got young people, and then we have an older set of people and everything in between. It's a stigma, and the stigma has to stop.
I couldn't agree with you more. We must be supportive of one another, and we must provide help. And it's a terrible thing to hear that anyone would be discriminated against because of their sexual preference or other types of differences. And Judith, this concludes the segment, and I want to thank you so much for joining us again on Successful Philanthropy. Today, our guest was Judith Windsor. She is an activist, she is an advocate, a businesswoman, a woman very involved in further promoting the rights of the LGBTQ community. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Jean Shafiroff, your host, and I'll see you next week.